Mira arrived at the banquet hall just before sunset, the sky the color of weak tea after milk. She liked being early. It gave her time to breathe and to walk through the big, quiet room before it filled with chatter and clinking plates. She checked the tall windows, the lines of chairs, the white tablecloths that had to fall exactly to the floor without a wrinkle. She ran her palm lightly over the fabric to smooth any small crease. Her work was simple, but she treated it like careful art. If the room looked calm when guests entered, she believed, people felt calm too. She worked most evenings and sometimes weekends. Daytime was for home, for bills, for the market, for visits to the pharmacy for her mother's medicine. She had learned to live by lists, cloths, forks, candles, menus, bread baskets, napkin rings, back to cloths. The lists kept her steady. In her bag, folded neatly, there was an old sheet of paper filled with hand-drawn music notes. It had been there for years. She never showed it to anyone, but she did not throw it away either. It felt like a tiny, quiet promise she had made to herself long ago. The staff liked her because she never raised her voice and always stayed until the last chair was pushed in. When a new server had a question, Mira answered without making them feel small. When the dishwashers rushed, she stacked plates for them in a way that saved steps. She knew the humming rhythm of the hall, the soft rush when appetizers went out, the wave of sound when the main course landed, the warm hush during dessert. It was a song without instruments, and she could feel where each note should fall. At the far corner of the hall stood a gray upright piano. It had been there longer than Mira had worked there. Nobody knew its full story. Some said a jazz player once brought it for a wedding and never took it back. Others said the owner found it cheap at an estate sale and thought it looked fancy. Whatever the truth, the piano leaned gently to one side like a tired old friend. A thin crack ran along the wood near the pedal. The keys were yellowed, and one of the small wheels under the leg was missing. When the light hit it at certain angles, it looked a bit like a smiling, crooked face. Mira had not touched it in months. The last time she tried, several keys in the middle did not speak. They stayed silent even when pressed. Another key made a dull thud like a door that would not open. The sustain pedal squeaked as if it needed oil. She remembered placing her fingers on it and feeling the small shock of disappointment. It was like meeting someone you had loved and finding they could not remember your name. After that day, she avoided the piano. She dusted its lid when needed and left it alone. People did not know that Mira had learned piano as a girl. In a small church with blue-painted windows, she used to sit on a hard bench and copy melodies by ear. The church did not have money for a teacher, so she watched the hands of whoever could play, then tried to match the shapes. She learned how to move a song into a new key if a note sounded wrong. She learned that a low, steady note could be like a floor for the other notes to dance on. She learned that music was not only what you played, but also what you decided not to play. Silence could be a gentle frame for the sound. Life, as it often does, asked her to set music aside. Her mother got sick. Money grew thin. The church piano needed repairs that never came. Mira took the evening job and promised herself she might return to music later. Later is a soft word, it does not have a date on it. But she kept the folded paper in her bag, and sometimes, while waiting for the bus, she traced those hand-drawn notes with her finger. The lines kept her company like quiet friends who did not ask for anything. On the night that would become a story, the hall was booked by a local business for its awards dinner. The company banners were navy blue with gold letters. Round tables held centerpieces of simple white flowers and small glass candles. A long stage stood at the front with a microphone, a screen, and a stand for trophies. The MC was a cheerful man who liked to tell mild jokes and remind everyone to clap for colleagues. Guests arrived in a stream of perfume, ties, and polite laughter. Mira moved through them like steady water, making tiny fixes no one saw, a bent knife, a wobbling chair, a stain on a glass that needed a fresh one. Two guests discovered the piano and lifted the fallboard to reveal the keys. They pressed a few and laughed at the uneven sounds. One key refused to sound at all, another rang louder than it should. "Oh no," one said, smiling. "This poor thing." Another replied, "It has character." They tapped a clunky version of a popular tune and declared the instrument tragic. Their voices were not unkind, just playful, the way people are with a thing they do not need. Mira heard them, and a small knot formed low in her stomach. She kept walking, a bundle of napkins against her hip. The supervisor that night was a woman named Farah who liked to see guests happy. She believed a good event had a little surprise in it. A photo booth. A dessert you don't expect. A table game. When she heard the piano noises and the laughter, she walked over with her notepad. "Does anyone here play?" she asked lightly. A few people shrugged. Someone pointed toward the service side, where Mira was straightening a stack of bread plates. "She does, I think," they said. "I've seen her touch the piano when the room is empty." It was true, though it had been many months. Mira looked up at the mention of her name and gave her gentle, practiced smile. Farah's eyes brightened. She liked the idea of a small moment before the program began. "Mira," she called across the room, using a tone halfway between request and tease, "you play, right? Give us a song while people find their seats." It was light, friendly, meant to add a spark. A few guests turned to see who was being called. A phone rose, ready to record something amusing. Someone whispered, "This will be good," with the careless confidence of a person who expects a quick, harmless joke. Mira felt the gaze of the room land on her shoulders like a shawl she had not asked to wear. Her first instinct was to shake her head, smile, and say she had work to do. But another feeling, quieter yet firmer, stirred in her chest. It was not pride and not anger. It was love, the kind that remembers a wooden bench, a blue window, a line of notes copied by hand, and a sound that helped her breathe when days were heavy. She did not want music to be used as a joke, not tonight, not by anyone. If a song was to be played, it should be offered with care, even on a broken instrument. She walked to the corner where the piano stood. The room did not fall silent, but its sound shifted. Forks paused midair. Conversations softened. People watched without knowing exactly why they watched. Mira placed the bundle of napkins on a nearby table. She wiped her palms softly on her apron, the way a person steadies themselves before lifting a fragile dish. She pulled out the wooden bench, which made a small scraping sound. Up close, the piano smelled faintly of furniture polish and dust. Tiny scratches crossed the lid like thin white rivers. She lifted the fallboard and looked down at the keys. Some were chipped along the edges. A few had tiny, dark stains that looked like old tea. She pressed a middle key very softly. Nothing. She pressed another and got a weak, tired tone. She moved to the high keys and found them clearer. On the left side, the low notes rumbled like distant thunder, but one stuck and would not come back up without a nudge. The sustain pedal squeaked when she touched it, then held the sound in a shimmering haze. She took all this in not with panic but with a practical mind. It was like stepping into a kitchen and learning which stove burners worked and which did not. You could still cook a good meal if you chose your pans and times with care. She tested a gentle scale in the upper register. The notes there answered cleanly, though a bit thin. She tried a simple chord on the right hand, then a slow, steady bass on the left that skipped the broken notes. In a few seconds she mapped the safe paths, here, there, avoid that key, skip the sticky one, press the pedal only on long tones to hide the squeak. Her shoulders lowered. Her breath deepened. She felt the old, kind order of music return like a friend standing quietly at her side. At a table near the front, a woman lowered her phone and tilted her head. She had expected a clatter of wrong notes, a funny moment to share with colleagues later. Instead she saw Mira's careful focus and felt something like respect rise in her chest. At another table, a man adjusted his tie and looked toward the stage, choosing to delay his trip to the bar. The MC, who had been scanning his notes for the evening, stepped back and decided to wait. The supervisor, Farah, stood still, her smile softer now, no longer playful, more hopeful. Memories came to Mira in small, useful pieces. The church keyboard with a dead middle C, and how she had shifted a hymn up a step to avoid it. The time she used only 3 working bass notes to build a pattern that felt like a walking path. The afternoon she realized a quiet note, well placed, could be more beautiful than a loud one. The way a room grows calm when it feels an honest melody. She did not plan to show off. She planned to offer something steady, something clean, something kind. She sat with her back straight and her feet placed lightly, one near the pedal, one firm on the floor. She let her hands hover above the high keys where the sound was clear. She decided not to start with a famous tune people would measure against memory. She would start with a simple line that moved like a river around stones. The melody would be familiar but not quite nameable. She would guide it away from the broken parts the way a careful walker steps around puddles. She would let the good notes shine and let the bad ones pass unnoticed. A soft chatter still stirred at the back of the room, but near the piano there was a small circle of quiet now. The candles on the tables wobbled their tiny flames in the air from the vents. Glasses caught the light and held it like little moons. The hall, with its long curtains and clean floors, waited. The old piano waited too, as if glad someone would try to speak through it with patience. Mira took one more breath, slow and deep. She did not think of cameras or whispers or the clock. She thought of her mother's evening smile when the house was tidy and the kettle sang. She thought of the little paper of notes folded in her bag. She thought of how even broken things can carry beauty if you guide them gently. Then she let her fingers fall, soft as rain, to begin. The first notes slipped out like small birds testing the air. Mira began in the high keys where the sound was clear and bright. She kept her touch soft, almost like a whisper. The chatter in the room thinned a little. A few people leaned back in their chairs. Some faces turned toward her with mild surprise, then curiosity. She did not look up. She watched her hands the way a gardener watches new leaves. A dull key waited in the middle like a tiny hole in a road. Mira reached it in her first line and stepped around it by moving the melody up a little. The shift was gentle, and most people did not notice. One man at a nearby table did. He smiled, as if he had seen a neat trick. Another guest lifted a glass and froze it halfway, then set it down softly so the clink would not break the moment. From the back, a late group entered, laughing at a joke from the hallway. The sound bumped against the music like wind against a window. Mira held her calm. She used the sustain pedal to carry the tone and fill the space with a warm line. The pedal squeaked on her first press. She winced inside but did not stop. She pressed and released on longer notes, so the squeak became a small breath that hid in the chord. A phone camera hovered over the keys, the lens shining like a curious eye. Someone whispered, "It actually sounds nice." Another voice said, "No way, this thing is broken." A small ripple of doubt ran through the room, but then her right hand rolled a little arpeggio that sparkled like light on water. The ripple faded. A server paused near the doorway with a tray of bread. He took one step back so the tray would not block anyone's view. The MC had planned to start on time. He checked his watch, then looked at Mira, then at the audience. He could see people settling. He could feel the room shifting from busy to quiet. He slid his note cards into his pocket. His mouth softened into a patient smile that said, "Let's wait 1 minute more." Mira built a simple pattern in her left hand, using only the safe bass notes. Thrum, thrum, rest, thrum. It made a little floor for the melody to walk on. When she reached the sticky low key that liked to stay down, She touched it and immediately lifted it with the side of her thumb, making the motion part of the rhythm so it looked like it belonged. A boy near the front noticed and grinned. He nudged his mother and pointed, as if to say, "Look, she fixed it." Near the bar, a man in a navy suit tried to clap along. His hands hit the air off the beat, too fast. Mira felt the uneven sound tug at the rhythm like a loose thread. She smiled to herself and added a small, steady beat in the left hand that folded the claps into the tempo. The man realized and slowed his hands. His face softened with a shy smile. He let his palms rest on the table, then tapped lightly, matching her count. The piano lid vibrated a little from the air vent above. A thin high note rang too long. Mira colored it with an answering chord, like two voices agreeing. She moved the melody into a new key, a whole step higher, and the tune found fresh ground. Someone at the back said, "She just changed keys," in a small voice, not to brag, only because they were pleased to notice. From the kitchen door came a short crash, just a stack of trays tipping and then catching. Several heads turned. Mira did not flinch. She held a long tone that floated over the noise and then settled. The sound formed a bridge between the distraction and the room. People exhaled at the same time without knowing it. As the piece unfolded, Mira's mind did not wander far. She kept a small map in her head, clean high notes like stars, a safe island of mid-high keys, dangerous middle spots, one sticky low note. She traced her path in lines, not blocks, always ready to turn left if right looked rough. When a dead note appeared, she hid it inside a wider chord so the ear heard the full shape, not the missing piece. She knew from the church that a listener wants the feeling more than the exact note. If the feeling stayed true, the spirit of the song stayed safe. A table of young people by the wall had first aimed their phones, ready for something funny. Now their arms were resting on folded napkins, phones flat. One of them, a woman with a blue scarf, had her eyes closed. A man with a gray beard sat straighter and crossed his hands together as if in thanks. These were small sights, but Mira noticed without looking straight at them. She felt the attention like warmth on her sleeves. Her memory offered a scene, a day at the church when she was younger, when she hit a wrong note and stopped in fear. An older woman had smiled and said, "Child, keep going. The next note can fix the last one." Mira held that sentence gently. Tonight, the next note was fixing many things, the rough instrument, the teasing tone, the small knot in her own chest. She did not play to show skill. She played to make the room kind, even for a minute. The business owner walked to the back to check the schedule. He returned, stood where he could see the tables, and stayed there. He looked at the way people were listening, and his face changed from busy to moved. He glanced at the supervisor, Farah. Farah gave the smallest nod, a sign that said, "Let it be." Farah's pen hovered over her notepad without writing. For once, there was nothing to plan. The candle flames fluttered in the air from the air conditioner. Glasses held a soft shine. The flowers in the centerpieces, white and simple, seemed brighter. Mira drifted into a folk lullaby from her childhood. She did not announce it. She just let the shape appear, gentle and honest. A few heads tilted, as if some old room in their own minds had opened a door. She let the lullaby walk hand in hand with a simple classical phrase she remembered from a dusty book, and the pairing felt natural, like two neighbors chatting by a fence. A new difficulty rose. The melody she wanted to play next lived mostly in the broken middle range. She could not avoid that area forever. She would have to cross it. But how? She tried a test step and heard the thud of a dead key. Instead of fussing, she answered with a right-hand figure that climbed, bright and quick, drawing the ear upward. Then she dropped a warm chord down to fill the space the dead note had left. The room did not hear the whole. It heard the arc. A woman near the stage, wearing a silver shawl, walked too close and bumped the piano's side with her bag. The piano gave a soft, tired groan. Mira leaned her shoulder the other way to steady it without breaking the flow. The woman gasped, whispered sorry, and quickly stepped back. She stood very still after that, her hands folded, watching as if the piano were a sleeping child. The MC took one step toward the microphone. He wanted to keep the event running. But when he heard the phrase Mira was shaping, he stopped. It sounded like a path leading to a small hill, and he did not want to cut the top off. He set the mic back in its stand and let the hill finish. When the phrase landed on its gentle peak and slid down softly, he finally breathed out. In the service lane, a dishwasher peeked around the door. He had soap on his forearms and a tired look in his eyes. He watched for a few seconds, then reached up and turned off the loud fan that always hummed near the ceiling. The air grew a little warmer and a lot quieter. In that pocket of stillness, the fragile high notes shone. Mira felt sweat near her hairline and wished for a handkerchief. She could not stop to wipe it. She let it be. Her fingers stayed steady. She thought of her mother and the tiny kitchen at home, the tea kettle with the dent in its side, the shelf with medicine bottles lined like small soldiers. She thought of how music had been a friend through quiet and worry. This thought did not make her sad. It made her strong. A child in a white shirt wandered up, drawn by the sound. He reached a finger toward a low key as children do. Before he could press, Mira used that exact moment to land a firm chord there herself. The full sound filled the boy's ear. He blinked, surprised, then smiled, and stepped back, as if the piano had spoken first and kindly. His father caught his shoulder and whispered thanks to Mira with his eyes. She gave a tiny nod, still playing. A light near the stage flickered once. The power held, but the blink felt like a reminder that the room lived in a world of switches and wires, timelines, and plans. Mira's music felt like the opposite, a thread pulled by hand, steady and human. When the light steadied again, the thread grew stronger, less likely to break. She introduced a new rhythm, not loud, just firm, to guide the room through a gentle rise. The new rhythm had space for breath. People started to breathe with it. You could see shoulders lower, hands drop, jaws unclench. The owner at the back rubbed his eyes like someone who had forgotten they were tired. Farah wrote one word on her notepad, repair. She underlined it twice. Then a fresh challenge, the squeaky pedal began to complain more than before, as if it did not like the length of the song. Mira solved it by fluttering her foot on, off, on, so the squeak turned into a soft, regular sound that matched the rhythm. What was once a flaw became a small instrument of its own, a gentle hush under the notes. The blue scarf woman opened her eyes, hearing it, and smiled. A table near the front had planned a toast. One person stood, glass raised partway, then slowly sat back down. The timing was not right anymore. The room was not in a toasting mood. It was in a listening mood. The person understood and waited, smiling at Mira in support as if to say, "Please, finish your sentence." Another man, the one who had thought this would be funny, felt heat in his face. He did not feel scolded. He felt changed. He had misread a moment and a person. He glanced toward Mira and, without moving his lips, said sorry to himself. He put his phone away and listened with nothing between his ears and the sound. All the while, Mira kept solving small problems, a note that would not sound, a voice at the door, a glass set down too loud. She did not let these things break the line. She treated them like stones in a shallow river, part of the scene. Her music stepped around and over them, making soft circles in the water. The lullaby returned for a second time, and this time, people recognized it. A few quietly hummed along, not words, just the shape. Mira shaped that shape into something hopeful. She let it rise toward a place that would need the broken middle keys to sing fully. She could not dodge forever. If she wanted the honest ending, she would have to risk the center. Her map in her head glowed at the edges where the safe notes lived, but the center stayed dark. She took a breath that filled her chest and made room for courage. The room felt the breath even if they did not see it. The MC stood again, but not for the microphone. He stood the way a person stands when he hears something lovely and wants to stand up to meet it. A few more people stood with him, not in applause, just in respect, as if rising could help the sound rise too. Farah watched the old piano like it was a person trying its best. She rested a hand on her heart. Mira let the final line of this section glide to the brink. The next phrase would go through the middle, the broken place. She knew she could invent another way around, an easier path, a safe turn. But the true line, the one that belonged to the song and to the night, passed through that center. If she could make even the broken part sing, the room would understand something without a single word. She placed her thumb where the danger began, felt the old wood under the key, and readied a plan made of small choices and quick listening. Then she lifted her hands a breath above the keys, ready to enter the hardest part. Mira let the air inside her chest grow steady and wide, like a calm lake before dawn. Then she stepped into the middle range, the broken place. The first key she touched there was one she knew would not speak. She pressed it anyway, but not too hard. She let the silence be part of the rhythm, a small rest like a heartbeat. With her other hand, quick as a bird, she answered the silence with a bright note up high. The room heard the answer and followed it with their ears, the way eyes follow a kite string in the sky. The next note in the middle made a dull thud. Mira did not fight it. She wrapped that thud inside a soft roll of notes, so the ear caught the smooth sound and missed the heavy one. Then she slid one finger to a nearby key that worked and leaned on it, long and warm. Anyone who had been waiting for a mistake felt their shoulders loosen. It did not feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like a choice. She started a pattern: step into the center, find a stone, step around it, cross to firm ground, then return. The pattern had a shape that people could feel even if they did not know the names of keys. Her left hand built a slow walk of low notes that were safe and true. Her right hand laid a ribbon above it, weaving in and out, bright and careful. When the left hand's sticky key tried to stay down, she lifted it with a gentle nudge and made the small hiccup part of the beat. It sounded almost playful, like a soft knock on a door. Someone near the front whispered, "She's fixing it while she plays." The whisper did not carry far. Most people had stopped talking now. They were breathing a little slower, like the room had remembered how to rest. The MC, who had been thinking about the program and the clock, found himself thinking about something else, the way a choice can change the meaning of a moment. He stayed by the microphone but did not touch it. Mira changed the key a little, moving the song higher for a few lines so she could avoid a dead cluster in the middle. She did it so gently that only a few trained ears noticed. The blue scarf woman did. Her eyes warmed. She had expected a nice trick earlier, now she heard simple skill turned into kindness. The music was not trying to shine by itself. It was trying to lift the room. The squeaky pedal complained again. Mira's right foot answered with light steps: press, release, press, so the squeak turned into a soft brush sound under the music. It was like the whisper of a broom moving across a clean floor. The sound made the notes feel more alive, not less. A server near the back, the one holding the bread earlier, felt a sudden urge to stand straighter and hold the tray like a small treasure. In the very center of the keyboard, where the piano was most tired, Mira tried something new. She shifted both hands closer together so the notes touched each other like joined fingers. Then she left a tiny space between two tones, using silence as a bridge. The gap was not empty, it was full of waiting. People felt the waiting and leaned forward without moving their chairs. Then, right at the end of the small gap, she dropped in a warm chord from the left and lifted a bright response from the right. It felt like a question and an answer in the same breath. A man in a navy suit, who had tried to clap along before, found his eyes getting wet. He did not know why. He had come to hand out awards and hear numbers and shake hands. Now he was thinking of his daughter's violin practice and the way she stopped when a string buzzed. He made a quiet promise to himself to tell her what he was learning from Mira. You can keep going. The next note can make the last one okay. The business owner, still by the back wall, took out his phone again. Not to time the event this time, but to text someone who handled building repairs. Do we still have the piano guy's number? He did not send the message yet. He held his thumb above the screen and kept listening. He wanted to see where Mira would take the room. Mira reached deeper into memory. A Sunday long ago came back. She was a girl on the hard bench, legs not yet long enough to reach the floor with both feet. The church piano had a broken middle too. Her teacher had said, when a note won't speak, let your hands speak around it. Mira let that advice move through her fingers now. She tapped the wood above the keys with one fingertip, soft as rain, to give a tiny drum sound while she crossed a dead spot. The tap hid the hole, and the melody landed safely on the other side. A child's small voice started to hum the lullaby from before, very, very quietly. His father gave a gentle squeeze on his shoulder, not to stop him, but to say, softly. The hum stayed soft and steady. A few adults found their breath matching it. Mira heard the hum and smiled inside. She allowed the tune to return for 2 lines. Then she braided it with a new phrase, something she had never played before, made from the room's mood calm, hopeful, awake. She realized she was not just dodging broken keys anymore. She was making the brokenness part of the song's face. The rests were no longer gaps, they were places to look at the light. The odd thud, when hugged by notes on each side, felt like a footstep on an old wooden floor. She leaned into this truth like a person who stops worrying and tells the truth kindly. From the kitchen, the dishwasher who had turned off the fan stepped into the doorway again, hands rinsed, apron damp. He did not want to miss the next part. Farah saw him and did not scold. She let him stand there for a minute. She herself stood with one hand on the back of a chair, steady, eyes bright. Her notepad always full of plans hung at her side unused. Mira let the music climb toward a small hill. She did not rush. She laid each step with care so the old instrument could carry it. At the top of the hill, where a showy player might hit a loud chord, she did the opposite. She went very soft. The high notes, clear and thin, came out like tiny bells far away. In the pocket of quiet that followed, a fork clinked by accident. The clink sounded sharp because everything else was so gentle. The person who made it winced and mouthed sorry, even though no one had glared. The room had become a place where people wished to be careful. Then she made her boldest choice. She brought the melody right back into the most broken center and held it there. But instead of pushing the dead keys, she split the notes between hands, borrowing one tone from above and one from below. It was like building a bridge from 2 sides at once. The notes met in the middle and touched. The sound was not perfect. It was better than perfect. It was honest. A low laugh, the kind that comes with wonder, escaped someone in the 4th row. The blue scarf woman pressed her hands together near her chin. The MC forgot the clock completely. The owner sent the text, "Let's get that piano looked at this week. Please." He hit send and kept his phone face down. Mira felt her heartbeat slow to the pace of the song. Her hands, warm now, moved with ease. Her face had no showy smile, just calm. She thought of her mother's small radio at home, the way it crackled and then found the station. This felt like that, a little static, then clear sound. She did not need a perfect piano to say what needed saying. She needed attention, patience, and care. Those she had. She shaped a new theme, 3 notes rising, 1 falling, then a gentle turn. The theme was simple enough that it could live in many keys. She played it high, then medium high, then hinted at it in the middle without touching the dead place, then answered with a low glow on the working bass notes. Each time the theme came back, the room recognized it sooner. Recognition brought comfort. Comfort made space for courage. She used that courage to add a small run of notes that danced like light across water. It was not fast for speed's sake. It was quick the way joy is quick. Near the bar, the man who had first laughed at the piano's sound stared at his hands. He felt a warm sting of regret. He wished he had not made the early joke. He looked up and watched Mira's face. He saw no anger there, only focus and care. He felt grateful for being allowed to change his mind without being shamed. He would remember this feeling later when he spoke to people at work. Mira's left hand, steady as a clock, began to loosen and glow. She pressed the safe bass notes with a firmer weight so they filled the room like a low lantern light. The right hand floated above, weaving the theme into a soft braid. Then, with a small tilt of her wrist, she led the braid down toward the center again. Everyone in the room understood the risk without knowing the details. They held their breath in a kind way, like an audience at a tightrope walk that believes the walker will cross. As her fingers reached the tricky stretch, she gave the piano's wood a quiet tap for rhythm and shifted one note to an open harmony that did not need the broken key. The sound sat in the air like a clean note in a large hall. A second later came its answer from the right, sweet and bright. They fit together so well that the missing key felt like it had chosen to wait on purpose. The room exhaled as one, a soft sea sound. She did not look up, but she felt what had changed. The space around her had a new weight, like a blanket warmed by sun. Respect is a quiet thing when it arrives. It does not shout. It settles. It makes room. The cameras that still pointed at her now did not hunt for humor. They tried to hold still. The people behind them wanted to remember, not to mock. A memory crossed her mind, fast as a bird's shadow, the old sheet of paper in her bag with hand-drawn notes. She thought of how she had kept it all these years. Not because she believed she would play again on a fine stage, but because she believed she might one day help someone feel less alone for a minute. That hope had never left. Tonight it had taken shape, not on a perfect grand piano, but on a crooked upright with a squeaky pedal and missing notes. She felt a small smile touch her eyes. She let the music lean into a soft, steady pulse, like walking beside someone you love. This pulse made a base for what would come next. The lullaby thread returned one last time, now richer, linked with the new theme. It felt like an old friend walking into a room wearing a new coat. People who had hummed before hummed again, but even softer, under their breath, like a promise kept. Then she lifted her hands a little, let one last high note ring, and allowed a wide, gentle silence to bloom. It was not an awkward pause. It was a full, peaceful space. In that space, everyone noticed small things, the candle flame steady at last, the soft shine on the piano's old wood, the way Mira's shoulders had dropped from careful to free. This was the turn. The room had started with a joke. It had crossed a narrow bridge made of patience. Now it stood on the other side. No one needed to say it out loud, but everyone felt it. The music had asked for care and had given back dignity. Mira felt the shift too. She rested her fingers a breath above the keys, ready not to prove anything, but to share. The worst part of the journey, the broken center, was no longer a place to fear. It had become part of the song's heart. She met her own eyes in the reflection on the glossy wood for a second and nodded to herself. Then she placed her hands down again, not with worry, but with quiet joy, and prepared to carry the room into the next phase of the night. The MC stood very still. Farah's hand, still on the chair, tightened and relaxed. The owner waited, phone face down, eyes lifted. The child with the soft hum watched, mouth open, like a storybook page had come alive. Mira took a breath that tasted like clean air after rain and began the next line, ready to turn careful strength into open light. Mira felt the room standing with her now, like a quiet circle of friends. She took that steady feeling and let it guide her hands. The new line she began was clear and bright, but gentle. It did not rush. It did not show off. It moved like water finding its way around smooth stones. She let the three-note theme return, then opened it into a wider melody that could fly over the broken places and come back home again. She chose a path through the safe notes and used small changes to keep it interesting. A soft lift here. A warm turn there. When the tune wanted a middle note that did not work, she reached a little higher, made that choice sound natural, and carried the phrase forward. The piano, old as it was, seemed to stand a little taller. It knew it was being treated with care. It gave back every clean tone it could. In the back doorway, 2 dishwashers had paused. They were still holding their towels, but their shoulders were relaxed. A server waited with a line of plates, yet did not seem impatient. Even the bartender, who was used to constant motion, rested his hands on the counter and watched as if he were at a quiet show. Work would continue in a minute, but for now, the room was balanced on the thin line of music, and it felt safe there. Mira decided to build a small medley, something that would feel like walking through a little town, greeting a few familiar doors. She slipped from her own theme into the soft shape of a folk tune many people knew as children. She changed a few notes so it sat in the safe part of the keyboard. People recognized the shape and smiled without speaking. She let it last only a short while, long enough to bring comfort, short enough to stay fresh. Then she turned into a gentle phrase from a simple classical piece, one she had read years ago in a worn book. The classical phrase wanted to step on a dead key. She did not fight it. She bent the phrase to a new key and smoothed the bend with a calm left-hand pattern. The bend felt like a quiet lane joining a main road. A woman near the front, the one with the silver shawl, put her hand on her heart. Not because the phrase was fancy, but because it was honest. It admitted the old piano's truth and still made beauty. The squeaky pedal that had worried Mira earlier now served as a soft brush under the line. She used it on long notes only, and each tiny sound came in the same place in the rhythm, like a faint footstep that you begin to expect and even enjoy. The boy who had hummed before began to tap one finger on the edge of his chair. Tap, wait, tap perfectly in time. His father glanced down and let him continue. Mira felt a warm courage rise. Not a rush. Not a push. A kindness that said, yes, you can go a little farther. She added a small improvisation. It was built from 3 safe chords and a few clear notes on top. She did not crowd it. She left space between the phrases so the notes could breathe. The space carried the room's respect. In each space, the candles seemed to glow brighter and the air seemed to soften. Halfway through the improvisation, a glass clinked from the back. The sound was sharp against the quiet. Mira folded it into the rhythm. She answered the clink with a bright 2-note figure and then moved forward, as if the glass had been a friendly knock. The person who had made the sound smiled in relief. They had not ruined anything. The music had made room for them too. She brought the improvisation to a small crest, not big, just a little rise. Then she let it fall into a tender calm. This was the place to close the circle. She brought back her 3-note theme, hummed now by a few lips around the room in almost silent breaths. She colored the theme with a simple harmony underneath, using only the clean left-hand notes. The old piano responded with a warm, pale glow of sound. It felt like evening light on a wooden table. Farah, the supervisor, had been watching like a careful host and like a friend. She now looked around the room and saw something she loved to see, people connected to one thing at the same time. She took her phone from her pocket, but not to record. She wrote a short line to herself in her notes app, invite her to play before events. Then she put it away and simply listened, hands empty. The man in the navy suit, who had tried to clap earlier, now sat with his palms open on his knees, as if catching the notes in his hands. The blue scarf woman's eyes were shiny, not from sadness but from recognition. The business owner, still near the back, had already sent the repair message. Now he thought about a different text, a message to the community center he supported once a year, asking about their music program. He did not send it yet. He wanted to let this moment finish with his full attention. Mira guided the music toward its ending. She did not tear the page, she turned it. One more pass through the theme. One more quiet hello from the lullaby. One more small bridge over the broken middle, built from two sides at once. She checked her map without looking, save high notes ready, working bass notes steady, pedal quiet and kind. The map was part of her now. She shaped the final phrase so it rose a little, paused in a warm light, and then came down to rest on two clear high notes and one soft low note. To make those last notes land cleanly, she had to avoid 3 broken keys in a row. She solved it with a graceful sidestep, a tiny arpeggio that lifted the ear over the treble and set it on the exact spot she wanted. The ear believed the landing. The heart did too. The last harmony spread into the room like a soft blanket. She pressed the pedal only halfway, held it a breath, and then released it at the exact moment the sound had finished speaking. The release made a small, right silence appear, like the space after a deep sigh. In that breath of stillness, nothing moved. Forks were still. Hands were quiet. Even the air felt gentle. Then the applause lifted, not like a sudden shout, but like a wave that starts small and grows strong. People stood without calling it a standing ovation. They just stood because their bodies wanted to stand. They clapped with care and with joy. The sound filled the room and rounded the edges of the tables and the corners of the stage. Some people who had never spoken to each other before turned and shared a look that said, "We were here." The MC, who had planned to jump in quickly, waited until the clapping began to soften. He walked to the microphone and spoke in a tone quieter than usual, the kind of voice people use in places they respect. "Thank you, Mira," he said. "That was beautiful." He didn't add a joke. He didn't need to. He stepped aside so that the clapping could rise again for a moment, then settle on its own. Mira did not bow like a star. She stood from the bench slowly, placed her hand on the old wood of the piano as if thanking it, and gave a small nod to the room. In her chest, her heart was calm. She felt no rush of winning. She felt a soft rightness, the way you feel when a drawer closes and lines up exactly with the cabinet. She reached for the bundle of napkins she had set down earlier. Farah reached her before she could return to the service lane. "Mira," she said, her voice warm. That was just right. She did not search for bigger words. She didn't need them. "Would you if you like play a few songs before events sometimes? I can add it to your hours." Mira's eyes shone but stayed dry. "If it helps the room, yes," she said. The words were simple and true. The business owner came forward next, moving carefully through the small crowd that had formed without pushing. "I'm the one who keeps this piano," he said with a soft smile. "Or doesn't keep it well enough." A few laughs came, kind and light. "I already texted our repair guy. He'll come this week. And if you wish, we'd love to give a donation to the community center's music program in your name." He looked at her, waiting. Mira nodded once. "Thank you," she said. "The center helps kids who need a place to sit and listen." He shook her hand, not like a customer to staff, but like one neighbor to another. The navy suit man, still moved, stepped up too. I made fun earlier by clapping off beat," he said, not making a show, just telling the truth. "You folded it in. Thank you for your patience." Mira smiled at him. "Music has room," she said. "We just have to make it." 2 servers hugged her lightly in the hallway. They did not gush. They squeezed her shoulders, the way you do when words would be too heavy. The dishwasher peered around the corner again and flashed a quick thumbs up, then ducked back and turned on the fan with a lower setting so it would stay quiet during speeches. A guest with a neat haircut and a calm face approached with a card. "I run a small community center nearby," he said. "We have an old upright too. The kids think it is only a shelf for water bottles. Would you consider coming on a Saturday to show them what you just showed us, that a piano, even a tired one, can speak?" Mira took the card and looked at it for a second. "I would like that," she said. "I can show them how to find safe notes and how to move a melody when something is missing." The guest smiled. "Exactly," he said. "That is a lesson for more than music." The blue scarf woman came last. She did not have a card or an offer. She had a story. "My grandmother used to play on a broken keyboard," she said softly. "She said the missing notes made her listen more carefully. Tonight I heard her again." Mira's face softened. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "Listening is the secret. The piano listens back when we do." The MC tapped the microphone lightly and brought the room into the awards part of the evening. He did it with a tone that matched the music's care. As he spoke, people kept turning to glance at the piano, then at Mira, then back at the stage. The evening moved on, but the shape of what had happened stayed in the air, like a scent that lingers in a kitchen after something good has been baked. Mira returned to her workstation. She lifted plates, checked water, guided a stroller around a tight corner, and tied a loose chair ribbon. Everything felt a little easier. The tasks were the same, but the space inside them was bigger. She noticed how the light from the stage washed the floor in a soft gold. She noticed how the flowers, plain white, looked like brave little flags in small glass jars. The details had always mattered to her. Now they seemed to matter to everyone. At the end of the main course, a small group near the front asked quietly if Mira could play one short piece as people finished dessert. She looked to Farah, who gave a small nod. "Something gentle," Farah whispered. "No need to fill the room. Just a ribbon of sound." So Mira went back to the bench, pressed 3 clean notes to test the air, and offered a short, shy tune that floated like a thread across the tables. People did not stop talking this time. They simply spoke with softer voices. The thread tied the room together while hands reached for coffee cups and spoons touched plates. When the night wound down and the last award was given, the applause came again, bright and happy. The MC thanked the staff with real warmth. He looked toward Mira and added, "And thank you to our pianist tonight, who reminded us that care is a kind of talent." People clapped once more, a quick, friendly burst. Mira felt the sound land lightly on her shoulders like a shawl she was glad to wear. Cleanup began. Chairs moved, trays stacked, trash bags tied. The piano stood in the corner, the fallboard lowered, a little dust glimmering on its lid. Mira wiped it gently with a clean cloth, not to hide its age, but to honor its work. "Good job," she whispered, a private habit from the church days. She did not expect an answer, but she felt one anyway, in the calm she carried. As the hall emptied, Mira stepped outside for a minute. The night air was cool and had the sweet smell of wet pavement. She could hear a bus sighing at the corner and a far dog barking twice, then stopping. She looked up at the dark sky and felt a quiet line of music inside her, thin and strong. It would be there tomorrow too. It did not require a stage. It did not demand attention. It asked only for care. She went back in, folded a stack of tablecloths, and placed them just right. The blue scarf woman waved goodbye from the door. The owner lifted a hand in thanks. Farah squeezed Mira's shoulder as she passed and said, "More of that, please, whenever you wish." Mira nodded. "Whenever it helps," she said. The night's work finished in good order. The hall lights dimmed to their resting level. The old piano, crooked and brave, waited in the corner, not embarrassed anymore. It had been treated as a partner, not a prop. And Mira, simple in dress and clear in heart, had turned a joke into a gentle celebration. The room had been changed by patience. The people had been changed by listening. And the story had found its quiet resolution, a song offered with respect, received with gratitude, and held, softly, by everyone who heard it. Morning light slipped across Mira's small kitchen like warm milk. She woke before the alarm, the way she always did on days after something big. For a moment she did not remember why she felt both light and steady, like a cup filled to just the right level. Then she saw the folded paper of hand-drawn notes on the table. Last night returned in a kind rush, the old piano, the hush, the applause like a soft wave, Farah's kind words, the owner's promise, the card from the community center. She put the kettle on and smiled at the quiet. Her mother came in wearing a shawl, walking slowly but with a bright face. "You came home late," her mother said. "Was the event busy?" Mira poured 2 cups of tea and told the story in simple pieces. She spoke about the joke that turned into a song, about how the room went calm, about the way the piano felt like an old friend trying its best. Her mother listened with both hands around the warm cup. When Mira finished, her mother nodded and said, "This is what you were made to do. Not to be famous. To make rooms gentle." Mira felt that line settle into her like a seed. After breakfast she checked her phone. There was a message from Farah, "Thank you again. If you would like, can you come 30 minutes early on Friday to play as guests arrive? We'll add it to your hours." There was also a message from an unknown number, "Hello, this is Cameron, the piano technician. I can come Wednesday afternoon to tune and repair the hall's piano. Will you be there?" And a short note from the community center, "We'd love to host a Saturday class for kids. Any date that suits you." Mira answered each with the same quiet clarity. "Yes, I can come early Friday. Yes, I can meet you Wednesday. Yes, a Saturday in 2 weeks is good." Then she put her phone away. She had bills to pay, clothes to dry, a small list for the market. Music felt bright in her chest, but life still needed its simple steps. She did those steps with a lighter spirit, as if her feet had found a better road. On Wednesday, the piano technician arrived with a rolling case and a kind face. He introduced himself and ran his fingers gently over the keys the way a doctor checks a pulse. "She's old," he said, "but she has a good heart." He opened the top and the front, showing the felt hammers and the long strings like silver threads. He tightened and loosened, tapped and listened. He cleaned dust from places no one sees. He found the sticky key and showed Mira a tiny piece of felt that had slipped. He fixed the squeaky pedal with a careful drop of oil and a small bend of a metal rod. He worked for 2 hours with patient hands. At the end, he pressed a middle chord that had been dead before. It spoke. Not loudly, but clearly. Mira clapped softly. The technician smiled. "She still has stories," he said, patting the side of the piano as if it were a shoulder. That Friday, Mira arrived early. She wore her work clothes and simple shoes. She set the water and checked the glass stacks. Then she sat at the repaired piano and pressed a test scale. The notes lined up like clean tiles. A few still had a soft wobble, but the path through the center was open now. She began to play gentle songs as guests came in. People walked slower past the door. Their voices were softer. A woman told Mira, "Your music makes my busy week melt." Mira said only, "I'm glad it helps," and kept the thread of sound steady. A week later, she went to the community center for the first class. The building was plain, with bright drawings taped to the walls and a basketball bouncing in the far gym. The piano in the small room had chipped keys and a crack in the bench, but it stood ready. 6 kids came in with curious faces. Some were shy, some restless, one carried a little notebook like a treasure. Mira began by asking them to put their hands on the piano lid and feel the wood. "This is not a machine first," she said. It is a body that can listen. They giggled, then grew serious, palms flat, eyes new. She taught them the idea of safe notes. She showed which keys made a calm sound together. She played a tiny melody and asked them to play the next note by listening, not guessing. When a key thudded or a note buzzed, she did not say, "Wrong." She said, "Listen again. The next note can fix the last one." The kids liked that line. They repeated it like a game. "Next note, fix last one," they chanted softly, drumming their fingers on their notebooks. A boy with fast hands wanted to play very quick. Mira asked him to play one note and then count to 3 before touching the next. "Make room for the note to finish speaking," she said. He tried, and his face changed. "It sounds bigger when I wait," he said. A girl who said she couldn't play found 3 notes that sounded good together and laughed out loud, the laugh of someone finding a hidden door. A very small child hit a dead key. Mira tapped the wood above it to give a soft drum, then played 2 notes around the silence. The child's eyes went wide. "You made a hole into a song," she said. That was the best sentence of the day. At the end of the class, Mira asked the kids to name the 3 things they learned. They said, "Listen first, safe notes, and the next note can fix the last one." She sent them home with a small assignment: find any sound in your house: kettle, spoon, door, fan, and play a note that sounds like it. They loved this idea. They ran out like birds, full of plans. News of Mira's quiet gift moved in gentle ways. A guest from the first night wrote a short post on a local page about the evening a staff member turned a broken piano into a full heart. A small paper came to the hall and took a picture of Mira's hands on the keys. The article was not long, not loud, and not dramatic. It said something simple: "Care is music too." Mira read it with her tea and smiled. She did not feel like a star. She felt seen in a true way, and that was enough. At her old church, word also arrived. The person who looked after the music called her and said, "We heard you have been playing again. Would you like to come on Sunday?" Mira went the next weekend. The church was as she remembered: blue-painted windows, wooden benches, the smell of old songbooks. The piano still had a tired middle, but now she knew many paths around such places. She played a simple hymn and then a small new piece she had written in her head while waiting for the bus. People sang soft and strong. A woman who had taught Mira years ago hugged her and said, "See? The gift never left. It was resting." At the banquet hall, small changes bloomed. The owner posted a note near the piano: "Please treat with respect. This instrument is part of our home." A clear jar appeared on the bar with a label in Farah's neat writing: "For Second Chances Community Music." Guests who felt moved put small bills inside. Once a month, the hall sent the jar's money to the center. The center wrote back with photos of kids around the piano, hands on the wood, listening. Mira's daily life did not become a show. She still folded tablecloths and lined up glasses. She still took her mother to the clinic and stopped for bread on the way back. But something inside all these steps had changed. The simple tasks felt like notes in a larger song. Mira began to carry a tiny notebook. She jotted down short lines like bits of melody: "Silence is not empty, broken is not the end, listen with hands too, make a safe floor, help the room breathe." These notes were not just about music. They were about the way she wanted to move through the world. Sometimes people asked her for a big performance. Do a fast piece. Play something hard. Mira would smile and choose something honest instead. If a person truly wanted speed, she might add a quick sparkle for 2 seconds, like sunlight jumping on water, then return to the gentle river that helped the room. She learned to trust that simple is not small. Simple can be true. True can be strong. On a slow Tuesday night, the boy who had hummed at the first event returned with his parents. He brought a drawing he had made of a piano with a cape, like a superhero. He had written on top, "Old piano, new power." Mira laughed and thanked him. She placed the drawing inside the bench as a secret gift for the instrument. Later, when she opened the bench to take out the dust cloth, the drawing smiled up at her, and she felt glad all over again. A month passed. The Saturday class grew. The kids taught each other small tricks they called bridge notes and soft spaces. They learned to start a song even if one key did not work. They learned to stop and listen without panic. Parents began to sit at the back and close their eyes, the way people do when they hear something clean and real. The local paper returned once to follow up. They asked Mira if she had a message. She did not prepare a speech. She said, "When something is broken, move gently. Find what still works. Build around it. The good parts can carry more than you think." The reporter wrote this down exactly. Later, when the piece came out, a quiet man from down the street left a note at the hall, "I'm fixing my shop table with my son. We read your line. We are moving gently. Thank you." Mira pinned the note behind the bar where the staff could see it on hard days. The owner kept his promise. The piano received regular care. Its tone was never fancy, but it was warm and kind. Farah's idea of small music before events became part of the hall's life. Sometimes a visiting musician would ask to try the piano, and Mira would step aside. Often the visiting player would look surprised and say, "This old thing has a lovely spirit." The staff would share a look. They knew why. One evening, after a long shift, Mira stayed alone for a few minutes. The lights were low. The candles had been blown out. The room smelled like sugar and soap. She lifted the fallboard and played the first line she had played on the night everything changed. The notes rose and hung in the air like soft birds. She watched her hands and thought of all that had flowed from that small, brave choice, the technician's careful work, the jar with the label, the Saturday class, the church hymn, the boy's drawing, the neighbor's note, the way people at the hall now set down glasses more gently. She finished the line and rested her palms on the wood. She whispered, like she had before, "Good job," to the piano and to herself. She did not mean, "You were perfect." She meant, "You were patient." Then she lowered the fallboard and tied back the long curtains so the room could breathe for the night. As she walked home, the city hummed the way cities do: buses, scooters, voices, a radio faint in a window. Mira heard all of it as a kind of music, some notes bright, some odd, some too loud. She felt no need to fix the world. She only wished to keep making small safe paths through it, the way she did on the keyboard. At a corner, she waited for the light to change and thought of her mother's sentence, "You make rooms gentle." She smiled at that. It sounded like a promise she could keep. At home, she set out teacups for morning and placed her little notebook next to the folded paper of hand-drawn notes. On the top line of a fresh page she wrote, "The piano wasn't broken. It needed a different path." Then she added, "People are like that too." She closed the book and turned off the light. The story did not end with a grand stage or a broadcast. It ended, and kept ending, in small rooms: a hall, a church, a classroom, a kitchen where Mira's careful hands and listening heart made broken things feel useful and whole. The applause from that first night faded, as applause does, but the change stayed. Guests spoke more softly. Staff took extra care. Children learned to wait between notes. And Mira moved through her days with the slow joy of someone who had found her way back to the thing she loved, not to be seen, but to serve. When people asked her later what she had done that night, she would say something simple, because the truth was simple. "I listened to what worked," she'd say. "Then I let it lead." And if they asked for a lesson, she would add only this: respect every person and every instrument. Start from kindness. The music will show you the rest. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check Importa.